The Orioles teams of the late 70s and early 80s played true team baseball under Earl Weaver. Sure, they had their stars, but they were defined by role players. Weaver had the uncanny ability to scheme a lineup that enhanced each player's strengths and masked each player's weaknesses. One such scheme was platooning, the idea of foregoing a defined season-long starter at each position, opting to start a right-handed batter on days when you face a lefty starting pitcher, and starting a left-handed batter with a righty on the mound. There were a few seasons there where Weaver would platoon the entire outfield. With the peace of mind that he was putting together the strongest possible lineup each day, it opened Earl up to do what he did best: throw leprechaun temper tantrums, cuss the umpire, and get ejected. Earl was ejected 99 times in his career, to be exact. Being a platoon player wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't attached to a big contract. The possibility of making the All-Star team was more or less out of the question for a platoon player because of how much time they spent in the dugout. The movie Platoon had not yet been released, so the option to watch that ironically in the clubhouse was out. Effectively staying ready through all of this downtime would be a challenge for most players, but Orioles platoon left fielder John Lowenstein found the solution. Quote, "I flush the John between innings to keep my wrists strong." Before we get rolling, if you would, please like and subscribe. Help break down the outfield walls that stand between small ball creators like me and a good audience. Today's video is kind of a departure from my past few, but this is a game of many emotions, and today we're going to have some fun. Here we go. John Lowenstein was born in Wolf Point, Montana in 1947. His family relocated to Southern California when he was a teenager. Lowenstein's backstory draws a lot of parallels to Padres pitcher Eric Show. I covered his tragic story in my last video. They were both from the same hometown, Riverside, California. Both attended Division II UC Riverside, a baseball powerhouse during those days. Both were honor students at Riverside. Show majored in physics. Lowenstein was an anthropology major. After 3 years there, both players were taken in the 18th round of the MLB draft. Both outperformed their relatively low draft capital and fast-tracked to the majors. John Lowenstein saw his major league debut on September 9, 1970 for the Cleveland Indians. He notched his first major league hit, which was also his first major league RBI, off of Washington's Joe Coleman in the 7th inning. He spent the entirety of 1971 with the AAA Wichita Arrows. He would follow his manager Ken Aspromonte to the majors when he was promoted at the start of the 1972 season. Aspromonte saw him as the ideal utility player, as he would slot in at second base, third base, and left field. Lowenstein came into his own during the 1974 season. He was a highlight in every phase of the game on a team with very little to brag about. He anchored left field after Walt Williams was dealt to the Yankees. He led the team in stolen bases with 36. On his success on the base paths, he said, quote, "There are so many intangibles in victory. I've always considered myself an intangible asset to a team, perhaps because the tangible assets of my career are not so impressive." The press caught on quickly with what they had in John. He never failed to deliver interview gold. In a 1975 issue of The Sporting News, John made it known that he hated fan clubs, saying, quote, "Fan clubs, what are they for? Does a player have to have one? I think they're a waste of people's time. A youngster should be out self-educating himself in other pursuits instead of running a fan club." He underestimated embittered nihilistic Cleveland fans because instantly, the Lowenstein Apathy Club, or the LAC, was born. He received thousands of letters from fans detailing how disinterested they were in his career. Occasionally a banner would be hung from the upper deck, which read, "Hey Steiner," followed by 15 to 20 feet of blank white cloth. That season, the Indians would play .500 baseball for the first time in nearly a decade. Surprisingly, apathy clubs didn't catch on outside of Cleveland. The American League expanded in 1977, and in the expansion draft, Toronto claimed Cleveland designated hitter Rico Carty. Realizing they had made a mistake in not protecting Carty, the Indians shipped Lowenstein and catcher Rick Cerrone to Toronto to get him back. 2 days later, Cleveland acquired outfielder Johnny Grubb and catcher Hector Torres from San Diego to replace them. Grubb would immediately be injured in spring training, and the Indians sent Torres to Toronto to reacquire Lowenstein. To enlighten the press on these complex transactions, Lowenstein explained, "A Mexican, Torres, to a Canadian team, Toronto, for a Jewish gringo, me, to a tribe of Indians, Cleveland. Now figure that out. It's a 3-nation deal at least. It involves money as well, pesos, Canadian, and American money. In fact, I'm the first Jewish Indian traded for a Mexican ever." Following this interview, the Cleveland Municipal Stadium organist got in on trolling John, playing Hava Nagila as he stepped up to the plate. John would clarify that he was actually Roman Catholic, so they quickly pivoted to Jesus Christ Superstar. Perhaps Lowenstein should be in the conversation for who pioneered the walk-up music we hear in the modern game. John Lowenstein was traded to the Texas Rangers in 1978, but was let go and picked up on waivers by the Orioles in 1979. He became an instant fan favorite in Baltimore, a key ingredient in Orioles magic right next to the national Bohemian beer. John provided this memorable 1979 ALCS walk-off homer against the Angels where Earl Weaver would meet him at third base. Fans instantly swarmed the field. He provided Memorial Stadium with another iconic moment during June of the 1980 season against Oakland. While trying to stretch a single into a double, he was struck in the back of the head by an errant throw. He laid motionless near second base as trainers tended to him. He was loaded up on a stretcher, and the crowd of 15,000 watched with bated breath. You could hear a pin drop. Nearing the dugout, Lowenstein sat up as if he had rose from the dead. Pumping both fists in the air, the crowd went insane. John's fellow platoon left fielder, million-dollar home run Gary Roenicke, detailed that John's antics in the clubhouse leaned into slapstick comedy quite a bit. He would smash birthday cakes with a baseball bat in the clubhouse, covering himself and his teammates. This is not to be confused with the Sparky Lyle cake story, the Yankees reliever from the same time period, a legendary prankster. He loved setting people's cleats on fire. He also had a fondness for sneaking around, getting naked, and sitting on birthday cakes, leaving behind a big triumphant ass print in his wake. This was during home games. You do you, Sparky. John Lowenstein, carried by a cake-fueled sugar rush, had a phenomenal 1983 postseason and got himself a ring. During his Orioles days, he invited journalists to stare into the void with him a little bit, dropping these quotes, "Baseball is reality at its harshest. You have to introduce a fictional reality to survive. Nuclear war would render all baseball statistics meaningless. And you never know where you're born. You just have to take your parents' word for it." He was released in 1985, and when asked about his plans, he said, "There's part of the Smithsonian I haven't seen yet. Also, I'm going to be a player agent and go to Taiwan and sign up all the Little League champions." He settled for a role as a color commentator alongside Mel Proctor and, of course, mainstay Jim Palmer on the Home Team Sports Network, now known as Masson. Already endeared to Orioles fans, he was a natural. As in his playing days, Lowenstein didn't take himself or the game too seriously, and fans naturally gravitated to his light-hearted style paired with his masterful insight into baseball. He spent about 10 years in the booth.
Well, look at this pitch right there, right down in his wheelhouse. A good high ball hitter from the right side usually, but he lofts this. I mean, the rolling thunder that you hear coming from the baseball, throttling its way out here into the distance was Mike hitting that baseball. Holy fajita, that ball was tagged.